Welcome, everybody, to yet another episode of the Cover 2 presented by Tigervision. Gotta thank Gus Johnson for that new intro. Uh, Gus Johnson's the GOAT. What can I say? He's nothing else but the GOAT. Grayson, we're back again with another episode. We've got bowl games, playoff semifinals. We got opt-in, opt-out debate. We got transfer portal. We got everything.
It's a lot.
It's been a great week.
It feels like we've been on autopilot for the last month waiting for this stuff to kind of take place. And how about that new intro? It gets me hyped up. I'm ready to roll, ready to talk about some semifinals that might have not lived up to your expectations. Alabama Cincy, Patrick, what you got for me?
Oh my goodness. Well, it wasn't quite the close call that I think we were all hoping for.
Yeah.
Bama kind of pulled away. They won by 21, won 27-6. Cincinnati unable to even reach the end zone against them. But I don't think the score really tells the whole story. I mean, Bama struggled, at least throwing the ball wise. Bryce Young didn't have his best game by any chance or any standard. He struggled a little bit against this Cincinnati defense, but Alabama did exactly what they did against Ole Miss. They ran the ball down Cincinnati's throat the entire game, and Cincinnati was unable to stop it. They stayed away from the strengths of Cincinnati and their defensive backs, their secondary, just ran it down their throats. And Brian Robinson had himself a day.
Yeah, it was clearly you could very much. The Cincinnati ran a 3-3-5, which I think you and I talked about earlier was the same thing that Ole Miss ran. So Bama just said, "All right, fine. We know." It was pretty much, can you actually stop us? Like, can you really? Because we really wanted to see how Cincinnati matched up physically against a Bama team that has played. This is probably the most tough for those Cincinnati linemen or defensive linemen and linebackers. This is probably the toughest opponent that they've faced in their entire life. So it's a very much a step up from the AAC, which you play all year. So they had to really adjust. And Brian Robinson was getting 5, 6, 7 yards of carry. And for all intents and purposes, they really were in this for a long time. It was just Cincinnati's offense. Desmond Ridder, for all that he's done this year, the moment was too big, batted passes, getting a lot of pressure. They were in it for a while. It was just a matter of time before Bryce Young and Alabama really figured it out. But I think for the first group of 5 team, it's not a terrible debut. It wasn't as bad as Notre Dame last year, getting in the same place, it was a smoke show against Alabama. I didn't think it was as bad as the score certainly doesn't reflect it, but Cincinnati came to play.
Yeah, and we talked about this in your podcast, Man with a Plan. Shout out that podcast.
Hey.
Make sure to go check that out on all platforms, Spotify,
Yes,
Apple Podcasts, all that. Made a little special appreciance, which I
look
really
at you with
appreciate.
the plug-in. I
with
appreciate that.
With the low key plug.
Yeah.
But like you were saying, Cincinnati, it wasn't an awful game from them. It was just, I think Bama is clearly a step above them at this point. Cincinnati deserved to be in this spot, and hopefully this isn't a last chance for the group of 5 for teams like Cincinnati who have amazing seasons, and deserve to be here.
And I think in the beginning, Cincinnati was able to put together a couple good drives. Like, they're getting some third down conversions. There was a play where I was like, okay, this could be really interesting. Where it was like 3rd and 1, and they had the handoff, and it was like okay, this is a for sure first down. And he dragged the pile for like 4 or 5 more yards, and I was like, okay, this feels different. This feels like a semifinal where it could be something. And they just couldn't. And when they got in the red zone, they just couldn't get it done. They had a couple plays where Ridder had Alex Pierce on a slant, and I think the ball barely reached his fingertips. So I don't want to be the what if or the what if this play went anything different. But I came away thinking that this Bama team, like all year, there's a little bit of an asterisk. And I'm not meaning that I'm taking this win away from them, but if Georgia can play their best ball, which we'll talk about in a second, I think they can take, especially on a second time. But again, we don't know.
Yeah, like you were saying, with that Georgia team, they kind of bossed this Michigan Wolverine team. And now there's even news that Jim Harbaugh might be leaving to go to the NFL. I don't know about that.
I did see that.
Anyways, Georgia was good to say the least. I think we can say. I think we all thought it was going to be a super close, super physical game. A lot of running, a lot
Yeah.
of defense, and Georgia did that, but
Michigan didn't.
Michigan not so much. Stetson Bennett had himself a game. He had 310 yards, 3 touchdowns. James Cook was really, really good. Brock Bowers was really, really good. N'Kobe Dean, Darian Kendrick were really, really solid on defense. Kendrick had 2 interceptions. And
Oh, Kendrick.
Michigan, they've relied on their rush game all year, and it did not go well for them. They had less than 100 rushing yards, and we see now what that truly elite run defense does to a team like Michigan.
Yeah, and it was a game that, unlike Cincinnati, you could see earlier where this was headed. This was a, and I think I texted you before the game. I said, okay, this could be one of the most physical college football playoff games we've had since probably Ohio State Clemson, where they're just
Back to
beating the
the
snot.
back to the olden days.
Yes, where they're just beating the snot out of each other. They both have a specific style and they know what they want to do. And something I really want to draw attention to was that Georgia kind of flipped the script and they were creative on offense. I was about to say JT Daniels. Stetson Bennett was tossing the pigskin all over the place when a lot of the narrative, and it kind of surprised me because Stetson's been the guy besides the Clemson game for a while, is that they were shocked that JT wasn't starting. I don't know if you think that they should have gone with JT, but
I
Stetson
no
certainly
no
saw
for
it and
sure
said,
not.
I take this personally, like the Michael Jordan meme.
Yeah, you got Stetson sitting there in the chair going, he's
Cigar
got
and
the
some whiskey.
he's got the whiskey right next to him. Yeah,
Yep.
all that. No, Stetson for sure should have been the
Yeah.
guy. I mean, JT has just been away from the team, I think, for so long with what was it? He had a COVID issue, he had injury
Everything.
issues, and he really didn't have too much playing experience, at least this season, going into this game. So I don't know why you would suddenly change that, especially when for the majority of the season, Stetson Bennett has been really, really good. He's been really
Yeah.
solid.
I mean, you can mark it as a game manager, but he was making some throws that I was like, okay, if this can be replicated, this could be very interesting next Monday. This was a thing where you hope Michigan can keep it competitive, but there was a fourth down in about, I think it was the second drive that they had because they went like 3-and-out or something, their first one. No, hold on. That's incorrect. But regardless, they were on a fourth down and they ran like they're like, okay, we'll go with old reliable Hassan Haskins. And boom, just didn't happen. I was like, oh, go. This could be Georgia. Jordan Davis
Yeah,
and company was they're making they had the headline all year was Georgia's defense super physical, toughest defense you'll play ever. Alabama goes in there and says, no, they're not. And they got this month off to look at this loss and kind of take it. And I think it's perfect for them that they're able to get that entire month to say, we're not as good as we think we are, and get all the motivation and film they need possible and kind of go back to the drawing board, fix some things up, get some new ideas. It's really benefited them in a significant way.
yeah, it really, really, really has. Now we get to see they only have a week
Yep.
to get ready for Bama. They had a whole bunch of time to see all the film against Bama. So you see, does Georgia come out a little bit differently than they did in the SEC championship? I mean, Georgia's favored. Lines moved to from
Oh
two and a
boy.
half to 3.
No,
That's
the rat
whack.
poison. The rat
That's
poison.
whack.
No.
So yeah, rat poison
Oh
levels going up for
no.
sure. Nick
Oh, it's
Nick
over.
Saban is posting that thing in the locker room
It's only 3 points,
all
but
week.
he'll like do enough to be like, hey guys, they think you're terrible. 3 points?
3 points, dude.
He's
You're
gonna get
losing
like
to Georgia
crazy
by
eyes.
3. How are you going to respond to that? But yeah,
I
um,
know.
it's interesting that it seems like John Mechie is that much of a difference maker, and I think he really, really is because when you only have to worry about Jameson Williams, we kind of saw in the game against Cincinnati that when you only have to worry about him, your passing game kind of disappears a little bit. But we got to see the likes of Slade Bold and Jaleel Billingsley step up if they're going to beat Georgia,
Yeah. And they have in the most part. They really
yeah,
have.
for sure. But we I don't know. We got to see how that impacts the game. How Alabama takes this injury and transforms their team to be able to compete with Georgia, and they're definitely going to be able to compete with Georgia.
Oh
I
yeah,
think personally that they'll probably still pull it out, especially with them being an underdog. You really want to be an underdog in this game, I think.
you do. And I think all the
And
teams that have beaten Alabama have been underdogs. There hasn't been a team that like has come in and been like, oh yeah, they're the much better team. It's usually a surprise in the end.
yeah, that seems to always be wrong when Nick Saban's an underdog. It usually ends up not faring very well for the favorite.
Vegas knows,
Um,
but not against Nick Saban.
yeah, Nick Saban's an anomaly. I think if we've learned anything
Yeah,
over his reign of college football, it's that he is an anomaly. But
the
we can
boogeyman.
kind of transition a little bit to some of the bowl games.
Yeah,
We can talk about a few of them. They were all a lot more exciting, I think, than the playoffs semifinals. You've got the Fiesta Bowl, which we can talk about. One of the
yeah.
first games of the day. Tale
Good
of two
start.
halves.
Good start.
Uh, Notre Dame was up 28-7, then proceeded to let up 30 straight points. I don't know how you do that.
Oh,
Uh,
ooh,
yeah. Oh my goodness.
that hurts me, and I'm not
Oklahoma.
even playing.
It was it was a bad day for the Catholics, man. Oklahoma
Oh yeah,
State. They had some serious halftime discussions. I think it's pretty fair to say. Notre Dame only 42 yards rushing on the day. That's pretty bad, especially you saw that Kyron Williams wasn't playing. He was getting ready for the draft. And Notre Dame, unfortunate for the Notre Dame fans, Notre Dame faithful, and Marcus Freeman.
yeah, and we described it as a tale of two halves, where Jack Cohn in the first half was shredding Oklahoma State's defense. Spencer Sanders wasn't able to get anything going. And I don't know what they told them in halftime or what they like just what they had something saved ready to go, but it felt like an
Some
explosion. It just and it's unfortunate for Freeman's for debut as a head coach because you never want your side of the ball to be the reason they lost. And giving up that many points unanswered to lose a near six bowl's gotta hurt. But it's not all bad, especially because Jack Owen looked pretty good. And their offense was able to be dynamic. They were able to make plays, move the ball, or take the second half out of it without their star running back who's preparing for the draft, which we'll talk about as a general discussion in a bit. But I think this is huge for Oklahoma State, who gets to party for the Fiesta Bowl, all the PlayStation 5s that they
just to
probably
have a
want.
little fiesta.
Yeah, and it's a redemption for Sanders, who had probably his worst game he'll ever want to have in the Big 12 championship, where he threw so many interceptions and potentially cost them the playoff spot. So, and these New Year's Six Bowls with the rotation with the playoff, it's always do they want to be there? Do they get so close that they go, oh, this is kind of an afterthought? And for both teams, it feels like they weren't close enough to where it really still matters for them, and it really showed on the field. They played like it.
Oh yeah, all these New Year's Six bowls, they were great games for the most part. I mean, you got like Kentucky and Iowa earlier in the day. They had a very close game. Arkansas and Penn State, they played on New Year's as well. It wasn't as close, but still a good game.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a lot of good games. Best one, got to talk about probably Ohio State and Utah. This thing this thing was exciting,
What a
exciting.
game.
I
God,
mean, oh my goodness, where do we start? Jackson Smith and Jake is probably
you
where we
gotta,
got to start.
yeah, record breaking
It
day.
record breaking day. Like you said it on your show. If there was a record, he's probably got his name by that now, by that record now in the Rose Bowl books, in the history books, everything. Oh my goodness, I just wow. It was
I,
this game was a a mind bender. I think it's
you're
pretty fair to
broken.
say.
It like
Um,
you're broken because you kind of get so invested into what the football game is. Because for the first half, it looked like Utah was going. They're ready to go. They had all their fans there. They had everybody packed. It was really cool to see the Rose Bowl so packed, and I want to make that a bucket list of mine at one day is go to the Rose
oh yeah,
Bowl.
for sure.
But I think we got to commend C.J. Stroud here for a second and Cameron Rising because both of them come in and they're getting hit. They're making incredible throws. It was a true QB duel. It was a true like, and a lot of people thought, okay, Utah's going to come in. They're going to be exciting for like a half, and then the talent of Ohio State will take over. That wasn't the case. And even their backup quarterback came in and led a drive that could have won them the game or tied it up. It was it was everything you wanted. It was a storybook. You had each chapter had something different and something new. There was a touchdown almost every minute. And for CJ Stroud, without his top two receivers, made so many plays, was able to get in a rhythm, get in a groove. You really loved it. It was fantastic.
Yeah, it was like you said, without his top two receivers, but you just had two more wide receiver ones step up.
Yeah.
Jackson Smith and Jigba, Marvin Harrison Jr. is insane, dude. I am like I don't even know how to react to the offensive display we saw. But yeah, kudos to Utah, kudos to Cam Rising, kudos to uh, Britton Covey, who ran it back,
Yeah.
ran back a kickoff. What, ironically enough, I was talking with my dad as we were watching this game, and he was like, maybe 10 minutes before, he was like, when was the last time we saw somebody run a kickoff back? And then it happened, and
Maybe
we
he
just
knows
looked at
something.
each other and we're like, that was crazy. But this game
I
had
was
everything. It had targeting. It had two
yeah.
targeting calls, Jack Sawyer, and I'm not sure who the Utah player was. It was, I believe, a wide receiver on the kickoff team. But
Yeah.
uh, kudos to Clark Phillips as well, who a former Ohio State verbal commit. He forced 2 turnovers, stopped Jackson Smith and Jigba from getting his 4th touchdown of the game. Didn't matter too much because he's still at his day.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just absurd, this game.
You even had receivers playing corners like that. One of the receivers on Utah was playing DB. He was
Yeah, number
doing the
2.
best he could.
I don't remember his name, but I think it was Bernard. His last name was
Yeah.
Bernard.
Yeah. Whatever you wanted to see in this game, you got. And unless you're a defensive guy, it was probably a nightmare for you. But I
But
certainly
you got
enjoyed
that
it.
you got that in the game afterwards.
You did.
Baylor versus Ole Miss,
Yes, you
which
did.
we can kind of transition to a little bit.
Ugh.
Ole Miss, unfortunate for Matt Corral, as he went out early with an ankle injury, which looks to be now just a sprained ankle. But quickly, I gotta mention Lane Kiffin's sweatshirt game. Did you see it? So he came out in, this is the most Lane Kiffin thing, by the way, coming
Okay.
out in a shirt that says hashtag come to the SIP. So he's actively recruiting.
Oh, okay.
Probably Arch Manning. It's probably Arch Manning, right? Like, I mean, it's
I
recruits in general,
guess
but it's got to be geared towards Arch Manning.
he and
This
him
is the
like
most,
have a father-son relationship going and brewing.
I don't know, but him actively recruiting while coaching a bowl game is hilarious. But then halftime isn't working out for him, so he decides to switch, go to the powder blue sweatshirt. So can we have a segment in the show where it's just like Lane Kiffin update? Like, Lane Kiffin
Yeah,
is one of my favorite coaches.
I
I
don't
think
see
that's
why
what
we
we need.
can't. I think we should
And
have a daily or every Tuesday when we record this, we should have a Lane Kiffin appreciation segment where
Lane
for
Kiffin
like
update.
60
Check
seconds we
his
just
Twitter.
yeah. I mean, he's just a cool guy. It's someone you'd want to go like just have just fun day
Yeah.
with.
Have you seen the video of him with, I can't remember what recruit it was, but they do a sweatshirt swap. Again, the sweatshirts. They do a sweatshirt swap. It gets posted on Instagram everywhere, and then later on they're just like riding around in somebody's car, one of the, either Lane Kiffin or the recruit's car, just riding around, showing, listening to like Lil Uzi.
Nick Saban's
It's
gonna take
great.
notes on this and start making like
Yeah,
custom
Nick
sweatshirts
Saban
for
needs to
all of his
start doing
coaches. He's gonna say,
that.
"Okay, I see you." Do something like
Yeah,
that.
but great work from Lane Kiffin to be
Highlight of the game,
actively
honestly.
telling people to come to the SIP. Again, Lane Kiffin, what a character! I love him. Please never change. But a little bit more about the game. Yeah,
He is the game, Patrick.
it
What do
was
you mean?
unfortunate for Ole Miss. It was a little bit unfortunate.
Yeah.
They had Luke Altmaier starting for the majority of the game, who in the third quarter was decent, but other than that, he struggled a little bit. Baylor lived in Ole Miss's backfield. They had like 8 sacks. I'm sorry, 10 sacks, 9 tackles for loss.
Ah, they're
Um,
copying Clemson, I see,
ah,
against Wake Forest.
yeah,
Ah.
we do it the best, don't we? But yeah, Baylor lived in Ole Miss's backfield and lived on offense in their second level as they just ran the ball over and over again down Ole Miss's throats.
Yeah, and I think this will like really will carry it into our opt-in, opt-out debate thing. This is a prime example, and thank God it didn't go the way that I thought it was going with Matt Corral because he came out in crutches, super emotional thing. What do you? All right, I really have to ask you because the game it very much centered around this Matt Corral situation. Because I think Ole Miss probably would have won because Baylor was. It would be fair to say inefficient on offense, getting certain chances when they had them. But I I think that the debate is so contested and it's such a gray area because you have people like Jalen Smith who lost millions of dollars. And granted, he got it back through that NFL contract. But there are players that will go through these games and there's always a risk when you every time you step on the field, regardless of whether it's the preseason, spring ball, game one, there's a risk that you take when you play this game. And so they're trying to reduce that risk by not playing the final game and when they see what they see as meaningless. And for some players like Kenny Pickett, for example, I think he could have greatly benefited from playing in that final game. And a QB class that's been noted as weak or not as strong, be able to elevate yourself amongst your competition. I just don't know. I can't take a position on it one way or the other because I can definitely see it. And guys like Matt Corral, it happens. It could Matt Corral could have gotten hurt and torn his ACL against Alabama and be out for the year, or he could have done it against a second stringer in practice. These things happen. It's football. So I just there's just you know what I mean? There's just so many factors and variables. So having it at the end when it's the big time of business where all the big games are being played, it's tough as a fan and consumer to miss out on your big players. But at the same time, I can see it, but I also want to see them play.
Yeah, there, like you said, there's a lot of factors that go into it. We can't. I'm in the camp where you can't fault a player for choosing either side. I mean, there's trade offs to both
Right.
to both sides of it. I mean, if you opt out, you're not going to get injured, or at least there isn't a chance to get injured. But it's not like if you opt in, you are getting injured. Like
Yeah. It's not a death
we're
sentence.
taking specific cases with like Matt Corral and Jalen Smith, where I mean, there's tons of players that oftentimes don't get injured and have a great time with their teammates. It's all about the players' specific motivations. I mean, you don't know exactly where a player's coming from. They could really, really need this money, really, really need this NFL contract. And meanwhile, some other players, Matt Corral, for example, he never had a doubt about playing in the Sugar Bowl. So it's ultimately up to the players on what they want to do. But there's trade-offs with it. Like you said, scouts are or NFL teams potentially may see it as not loving the game, which so be it. Players that opt out are gonna have that have that with them and make that choice. But it's up to them whether they want to do that or not. I mean, I don't think it is a be all say all that they hate the game of football. It helps if football players love the game of football,
Yeah.
but you know I don't think it's fair to say that to put every single player in a boat and say, this era doesn't love football
Yeah.
because,
It's
you
very
know,
bit much a generalization.
it very much is. But, I as, as a consumer, as a college football lover, I'm going to always hope that we can have the best players play. But in reality, that isn't the truth. And we can still get you know, great games from backups or from players that don't play a lot. I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr., like we were talking about earlier, 3 touchdowns. He had what 5 catches all year.
Yeah. And
Goes
then he had
in
3 touchdowns.
and yeah, and gets 3 touchdowns easy. So,
Yeah.
it's a tough situation. Again, it comes around every single year. Will continue to come around every single year, unless the playoffs bowl season is changed. But um, I don't know. We can't really judge them
Mm.
for choosing one way or the other.
I think there's two more things that we gotta cover that we wanted to that the debate's always going to spark up, and one of them's going to be the transfer portal, and one of them's going to be the postseason. And I think
Yeah,
with the 4 team playoff, it was designed to create any doubt because you always have a 3 seed, like in the BCS era, you always had a team that was at number 3, and we've had a number 4 team win the national championship in this era. It creates more games, more revenue, more business. As you have to always look at it on that side, but I think they wanted to eliminate fans going, okay, well, what about I? And this is the problem because I was too young to kind of in the BCS era. I was just getting into football as they were taking it out and starting with the playoff. But you have examples of this year or last year, the years before, where you have a 3 seed, but then it keeps expanding. So what about the 5 seeds? What about the 6 seeds? do you believe that the 12-team expansion that we've seen and heard about is worth? Because I think the perfect number is 6. You incentivize getting a top team in the country a bye, but at the same time you keep your 4 playoff system in a way, if that makes any sense, and you still get you get an extra game or extra couple games. But I don't think 12 is the sweet number that everybody thinks it is, because I think it's just too much. Because you'll put like the 12 team in the country who's potentially a 4-loss Auburn, for example, or a 4-loss, I don't know, like Wisconsin. They come in and get absolutely throttled by a Georgia that's 12-1. So I don't know where your head is on this, but I think it's certainly an issue that they got to find a sweet spot for.
Yeah, so I think the playoff is definitely in need of some change because average margin of victory in the 23 college football playoff games
It's not good.
is 19.3 points, with a
Yeesh.
lot of games having double-digit wins. I think college football at least is probably trying to recreate some of the March Madness um, that college basketball has, and I just don't know if that's necessarily possible. I mean, you're gonna have upsets, but when you have a team that is when a football team is bigger, right? So you're going to have there's more moving parts, and when that happens, I think it's a little bit more difficult to have an upset, um, like it is with basketball. So I think if we're gonna look at expansion, we've got to look at um, it, at least in terms of trying to create the importance of bowl games again. Do we make those bowl games the opening round playoffs? Do we make them the second round of the playoffs? Like if we start, if say we're going 12 teams, I think 12 teams, it's going to. I don't know. I don't really know what the correct number is. In all honesty, I want to say it's 12 teams. It incentivizes conference championships and all that. Um, and if you're getting buys to the top teams, that also incentivizes conference championships. Um, but do you have the first round of playoffs at home games? Do you do that? That's an interesting thing that we got to look at. I mean, it would incentivize again winning because then you get home field advantage. And then do you have the second rounds? Maybe you put bowl games as those. So you got the Rose Bowl, Fiesta, all the New Year's Six. Those become the second round of playoffs. And maybe you have the losers of the first round games play in the rest of the bowl game. So at least you're getting a little bit, I think, of the importance in those big bowl games back.
Yeah.
I don't know what your thoughts are on stuff like that.
I like the idea of you got to incentivize the top, because then you have games that are lost because they just rest them. Eventually, it'll reach a point like you could have a 3 seed Georgia that's like, okay, we're going to go into this SEC championship game with virtually nothing to play because we're in it regardless. So if you incentivize a home game, or B, immunity as a first round bye to rest your players, and then you have the playoffs a month later to add on to that, and I think it would make this big month of a gap where college football kind of feels like a dead space. You could start to shorten that a little bit and start the playoffs much sooner. And I like the idea of them having a home game because then it involves the schools, the communities. Because imagine if they had a playoff game in Clemson. I mean,
Yeah, that'd
the
be
place would not sleep for
sick.
72 hours. That would be so cool. Tickets would be unbelievably expensive, but it'd be so much fun. It would
Mhm.
be Matt, can you imagine rushing the pole after winning a playoff game? Or Tuscaloosa playing, I can't believe I just botched that pronunciation, but imagine being in Alabama
Uh,
and they're playing like,
the Bama fans are gonna come after you for that one.
I know they're gonna like, I'm scared to like open my DMs now, but like in Alabama, they're gonna have like a 12 seeded. Like, what if they played like Texas? Whoa, and Texas beat them. It'd be the greatest upset ever. So you have a lot of opportunities, but I think that they don't need to rush out a solution. They need to find that sweet spot, and they need to really they need to take everything with a grain of salt and figure out the best combination. But I do like the idea of the home games, just because
Yeah.
I want to go to a
So
playoff game.
yeah, that and then also if we're trying to reinstill importance in the bowl games again, what about like the sponsors that are getting tons of money from this apparently? If they incentivize the players by endorsing them, I think that's another way to
Completely
get them to
possible
play in
now.
those games. And then like because what was crazy to me is like Ohio State fans returned multiple thousands of
To
tickets
the
to the bowl
Rose
game,
Bowl.
and if you
Oh.
if you know anything about Ohio State culture, it's the Rose Bowl. Like
Yeah,
that has been their history. That has been their ultimate goal for decades. So that's crazy to me that they're
it's
returning
become
tickets.
playoff or bust
But
now.
yeah, there's just so much nuance to this conversation
Yeah,
that we can talk about. I mean, like, does there become an issue with the amount of games being played if you're having multiple rounds of playoffs? Um,
could
I
shorten the
I
regular
was scrolling
season.
through Insta. Yeah, I mean you could,
No one
but I
cares about
thought of
us playing like UConn or something like. Not to sorry to cut you off, but like nobody cares about Clemson or Alabama playing like in the NCAA 14 term FCS Southeast. Like you can cut out those cupcake games. Limit it, what they did with COVID is limit the schedule to like 10 games, and then even if you add those extra rounds, they're still only playing up to 15 games in the end, anyways.
that's true, and but a lot of people don't like when those big programs play small programs, but it does help the small programs a lot
This is true.
with their football program. But I was scrolling through Instagram last night. I can't remember. I was just scrolling through like comments of stuff, and I can't remember who said it. So if you did come up with this idea, kudos to you. I don't know what you think about it, but what if you kept the playoffs at 4 teams,
Okay.
but you played the bowl games as an extension of the regular season?
Okay.
Does that make it, because then you're only adding one more game potentially. You're getting out of conference matchups that you normally wouldn't have. You do
Okay, I
it
see what you mean.
maybe after conference championship weekend. I don't know. Maybe before. I'm not sure how it would work. I don't know
Interesting.
the exact logistics, but I thought it was an interesting idea where you have the bowl games become important again because you have to play to potentially, at least those top teams, those top bowls are you are making it important again because you have a chance to turn that into a playoff appearance. I don't
I
know what
think that
your thoughts are on that.
I like that. And if they keep it at 4, they need to eliminate they need to take the New Year's 6 rotation out of the playoff. They need to make it its own separate entity. Because I think
Yeah, I think so too.
if you're in the Fiesta Bowl and 5 hours from after you're done with the Fiesta Bowl and then you turn on the TV and the Orange Bowl is the playoff game, it makes the New Year's 6 bowls, the other ones that are in that rotation that year, less relevant and more of an afterthought. So if you just I mean they play in the NFL stadiums anyways, so just rotate cities for playoff games instead of bowl games so other teams A can get chances to play in New Year's 6 bowls and B the New Year's 6 bowls don't feel like an afterthought. They kind of feel like their own separate special thing. And then the playoffs can just be the CFP semifinal in Tampa and the CFP semifinal in Minnesota, where they play in that super cool stadium. And
Mhm.
they can
Yeah.
still happen in those cities, but I think that the players see it as an afterthought. They're like, we had to play in the this is like the kiddie version of the New Year's Six or something like that. But it's
Yeah.
there's so much I could literally talk about it for hours, but I know we don't
Oh
have time
yeah,
for
for
that.
sure. Maybe later on when there's a little bit less to talk about, we have a whole episode about it. But
I mean, we'll get the
yeah,
whiteboards out and draft like
mo-
segments.
moving moving the playoffs, moving the bowl games. I think you also got to talk about recruiting period. I think personally, it shouldn't be something coaches have to worry about while they are coaching still in the regular season, and that also leads to coaches leaving early to pursue other jobs or to get other programs that they take jobs with ready. Like Lincoln Riley, Brian Kelly, um, you know Billy Napier, I believe, stayed for his team's bowl game at Louisiana, but
Yeah.
coaches like that leaving early, I think if we're changing the postseason, the postseason schedule, I think you've got to change the recruiting period to a specific time and place. Change it back to what it was originally, where it's what is it, late January, early February,
Yeah. It's like a
something like
month
that,
of time.
and then also change the transfer portal to a specific time of the year. That way, coaches don't have to worry about managing all those players at a specific time. And we can get into this with
Yeah.
Caleb Williams,
Speaking
who
of
crazy he is leaving Oklahoma.
Yeah,
Um,
he was like you've seen the so that was a lie meme where he's
yeah. But funny enough, Dylan Gabriel did the same thing. I guess Dylan Gabriel doesn't know what the word committed means because he
dude's
committed to UCLA and is now he's like,
dude has
not never
changed
mind.
more schools than I've
Psych.
like
That's the
yeah, I
wrong
know.
number. We're going to we're going to Oklahoma, not UCLA.
Coach Venable's
Uh,
head is spinning right now. He's like, what is happening?
yeah, he's. I don't know, dude. It's so crazy. I think it's become a little too much. In all honesty, like
There needs
I
to certainly be a
it
deadline for this stuff.
there's there's a fun aspect, there's a craziness, unexpected aspect to the transfer portal, as it is pretty much just free agency now. But at a certain point, it is so much to keep track of. You don't know where players are going, and I think it gets rid of the tradition a little bit of
Yeah.
college football.
College football feels a little disorganized right now. It's kind of like going through this weird stage where players are getting paid, players can leave whenever they really want to. It feels a little disorganized, and I think it'll just take a couple years to get it figured out. That's, I mean, I could talk about it again for ages, but that's just a simple spin on it. Is that college football is going through growing pains right now, and whether you're a fan of it or not, just appreciate the process that we have it.
Yeah, yeah. College football, I think, is going through that preteen stage. Is hitting puberty. We don't know.
It's
It's getting
rebelling,
weird emotions. It's
skipping
getting angry
curfew.
at his parents. It's I don't know.
They had
It's
their
growing
first sip of
hair in weird
beer.
places.
They're feeling
But
rebellious.
yeah, if feeling rebellious is an
They snuck into
understatement.
the wine cooler and they're trying to get in like going to all the
Oh,
parties too. Like they're
Grayson, you do that as a kid?
of course not.
Are you speaking from personal experience?
No, I'm not, Patrick. Don't get me in trouble.
Oh my goodness. That'll probably do it, I think, for this
Let's
week. Any last shout outs for
I'm
yourself,
not a
Grayson?
criminal. I just want to shout out Patrick for coming on the we basically had the same
Thank
conversation
you.
twice, which is pretty fun. But
You
we
know,
spun it up.
got a little more nuance, I think, this in this one. You know,
Yeah.
when a little bit differently, when in different directions. But
Yeah.
shout out Zach, who
Yes. The
probably
GOAT.
can't see, but he is genius, producer, editor, all that. Couldn't do it without him.
He's
Shout out the Bengals, wrapped up the AFC North this week. Shout out the Patriots, going to the playoffs.
we're back,
It's
baby.
we love the NFL. We'll
Hey,
probably
if you
talk a
guys
little
want
bit
to see
more
NFL
after.
content post national championship, just let us know because we'd be happy to talk
Yeah,
about it. Because we
we would love to do that.
especially if
Um,
New England and Cincinnati play in the playoffs. Be
oh
very
yeah,
interesting.
oh yeah. But shout out NFL. We'll be back in the studio next week.
Yes.
It's the end of winter break, so we'll be back in the studio, back in the lab, cooking up some great content for everybody. And just thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in as always. Until next week, we'll see you. Have a good one.